I'll do. I've got an even more of a shocking story this time, coming from old Germany, where I was stationed for quite a few years. For anybody who's interested, I've got quite a deep connection with Germany, not only from my military career, where I was in Paderborn, but I was also born in Germany, in Munster. My mum and dad both served in the army. I'm not a German citizen. I don't have German citizenship or anything like that, but I was born there. So for me, Germany does hold quite a special place in my heart. As I always say, I'll put the link for the story below. If you visit the site, please, it just helps them with the obviously traffic and any advertising revenue they receive and all that good stuff. I'm not sponsored in any way. I don't make any money from it, so it's not that I'm asking you for my own personal gain. I just think it's good etiquette and conduct to do this for these sites that produce this content. Anyway, on with the story. German judge lets 8 men who gang raped girl walk free. This story's from December the 4th as well, so it's quite old, but still, like with the last story I've just done, still recent enough that it's to be incredibly relevant. An expert witness who testified before the Hamburg Regional Court suggested elsewhere that rape may be a means to vent migrants' frustration. Well, if that isn't the quite possible worst case of trying to pathologise and medicalise crime and take away the personal accountability of individuals, almost up to a point of it being infantilisation of these people, I don't know what is. And I do think that is a big problem as well, not only in Europe but in the UK, of people treating these invaders as being like children. The infantilisation of them is unbelievable and crazy, where they try to remove any sort of ability for them to take any sort of personal responsibility or accountability for their crimes. I do find it quite frustrating and shocking that that there are professionals who do this. So anyway, a German court delivered its verdict Tuesday concerning those responsible for the barbaric September 2020 gang rape of a 15-year-old German girl in the northern city of Hamburg. If for anybody who hasn't been, Hamburg is a beautiful city. I highly recommend it. Well, it was when I was there. Now, I left Germany in 2013, but a lot has changed obviously since then. I don't know how much immigration they've had from outside of Europe into Hamburg, so it could be an absolute hellhole now for all I know, but it used to be a lovely city anyway. Of the 11 men initially charged in relation to the gang rape of the minor, only 4 of whom were technically German. Well, yeah, technically German, as in they may have been born there or something like that, but they're not German. None of these people are, in my opinion. 2 were acquitted. 9 were found guilty. 8 got probation for gang rape. That is insane. Not exceeding 2 years, only 1 is headed to prison. There has been significant backlash following the release of the 8 convicted rapists, prompting officials to condemn critiques of the judgment, particularly those of an anti-migrant nature. Yeah, because the higher ups in society always go after the plebs when they say that this isn't right. Oh, you can't blame the rapists. You can't blame them. Look, they've got brown skin. It's not their fault, is it? They're not responsible for their actions. You're the monsters for criticising them. It's cultural enrichment, don't you know? We should be celebrating it. Diversity is our strength. That's what this is. And they're showing you their strength by raping your children. What's the background? Spiegel reported that the victim attended a party on the festival lawn in Hamburg over 350-acre city park on September 19th, 2020. Four of the men dragged the girl, then intoxicated, into a bush and raped her. For those of you who are wondering, by the way, in Germany they are allowed to drink much younger than over here. So, and that doesn't, and even if she was intoxicated, so what? She shouldn't be raped. Although I do say this, and I've said this in previous videos. Unfortunately, women's feminism, I should say, has really given a lot of young women crazy ideas. And although I don't dispute that women should be allowed to walk around and not get targeted, unfortunately, especially in large urban areas, if you are going to get intoxicated as a woman, you are putting a target on your back, I'm afraid, to predators. I'm not saying that that shouldn't happen. Absolutely, it shouldn't happen. But the reality is that we don't live in the perfect world that you can discuss with your friends at university or in your social circles. We live in the real world. And just like if you walk around the Serengeti and hang a couple of stakes off your neck, you're going to make yourself a big target for the predatory animals there. Well, unfortunately, the same can be said for if you're going to make yourself into an intoxicated individual who's incapable of being able to assess what's going on around them properly. Unfortunately, nonces are going to see you as the weak. You know, they're going to see you like the limping gazelle on the Serengeti, and they're going to grab you instead of somebody else. So there are obviously things you can do, like take a taxi home or stay in large groups, etc., etc. But unfortunately, you are making yourself a target if you are getting intoxicated. Shouldn't happen. Absolutely, should not happen. But unfortunately, that is the way of the world. Into a bush and raped her. One of the rapists added insult to grievous injury and stole her phone and wallet. Well, obviously, I mean, if you're going to rape somebody, why wouldn't you steal the phone and wallet as well? You know, you've invaded that person's most private of places, so nothing is sacred to these individuals, I'm afraid. And they probably see her as untermensch, as the Germans would say, anyway, because she's a Christian. She'll be a Christian, or they will perceive her as a Christian and not a Muslim. So to them, she is not really a full human being anyway, as far as they're concerned. Two other men then joined in raping the victim. After the initial series of attacks, the victim reportedly began stumbling away right into the arms of yet another rapist from the pack. The rapist, who intercepted her near the festival meadows, was then joined by 3 additional... Yeah, so they're going off getting the mates, that's what's happening here. Who were suspected to have all have similarly sexually assaulted the victim. Owing to the uncertainty about whether the final 3 all raped the victim, one rapist was acquitted. Why was he acquitted? He's there, he's involved. Yeah, okay, he didn't rape her, but he seriously sexually assaulted her, or at the very least is a party to the crime. He should still... All these men should be getting flogged at the very least, and then getting hefty prison sentences. Some of them should be getting shot, in my opinion, you know, or facing the electric chair, or anything equally horrific or barbaric. I genuinely don't care. Gas them, give them a lethal injection, feed them to lions, whatever. I don't care. It's disgusting. The brutal gang rape lasted nearly 3 hours. Oh my goodness. 3 hours, wowee, that is medieval. These men genuinely do need shooting, in my opinion. According to German newspaper Süddeutsche Zeitung, after her violent dehumanisation, the victim managed to get onto a train. However, her aggressors, understanding that she was travelling alone, followed... Yeah, because they do, that's what they do, they're pack animals. They're absolutely... This is what they do in their own countries. This is normal tribal predatory behaviour from these sorts of places where they come from. Fortunately, she fled to a group of people who recognised her condition and called the police. DNA evidence implicated 9 of the rapists. There were also video evidence, but Spiegel indicated that the footage was irretrievably deleted shortly after the crime. Well, obviously they did. Such that neither investigators nor the court could confirm what genetic evidence made abundantly clear. An 11th defendant charged with aiding and abetting and filming the rape was acquitted earlier this year. With 4 of the rapists were allegedly of German nationality and other 4 reportedly of Afghan, Kuwaiti, Armenian, Montenegrin nationalities. The Morgan Post Verlag GmbH indicated 1 was born in Iran, another in Libya and a 3rd in Egypt. The court has not indicated the nationality of the 2 rapists. Trial. Although the rapists were aged 17 to 21 at the time of the horrific crimes, they were tried in a youth court. 21 in a youth court. And this is the madness of Germany. I mean, the problem with Germany is that they've got guilt from World War II and what happened with the mid-century Austrian painter. And they've never been able to forgive themselves for it. So, and this is the problem now, is that anything that involves sort of minorities or people who aren't, as you would call the genetic Germans, they treat them with absolute kid gloves because they are so scared of being labelled as some sort of bigots or as racists or obviously mid-century Germans again. So if these people were true-blooded Germans, they would get the absolute book thrown at them and they'd never see the light of day again. The trial where the court prohibited media coverage began in May 2022 and lasted 6... Yeah, well, they've done that because they don't want an uproar from the general public. That's why they've blocked media coverage. It's not to do with the sensitivity of the case or anything, but this will absolutely be to do with protecting immigrants, protecting the whole thing of mass immigration and not wanting the general public to find out about it. 96 witnesses and several experts ultimately gave testimony. Among the so-called expert witnesses was psychiatrist Nala Samia. Samia intimated that the gang rape may have been a means to let off some of the frustration. See, this person needs to be stripped of the qualifications that supposedly comes with migration experience and socio-cultural helplessness. No, it comes because they're monsters. It comes because these men are just monsters. They have absolutely zero respect for the place that they live and they see the people around them as being below them. And that's all it comes down to. I don't buy this BS excusing of, oh, well, you know, they're just victims living in a foreign country and they can't cope. No, that is that's absolute rubbish. Absolute rubbish. And I've got a feeling that this person, and I've said this before, this so-called expert, I bet is a woman. And unfortunately, women do have a tendency to, and not all women, obviously, if you're a woman who's hearing this and going, that's not me at all, and this isn't about you, there are a lot of women who do tend to infantilise people, and do tend to try and pathologise these things as being what they are, because they like to bridge build and, you know, create unity and bonds rather than face the tough decisions of calling somebody out for horrible crimes. And this is also, we talk about how patriarchy is bad and how, you know, everybody needs representation. Unfortunately, in things like psychology and education, there is a predominant overrepresentation of women, and I think when this is the mainstream beliefs of that industry, I think it goes to show that there aren't enough men in that industry, and there does need to be more men, because you need the research that clearly this woman is being driven by is clearly substandard and below what you would call acceptable in its conclusions. Samia said rapists who live in the margins of society, completely uprooted culturally, linguistically and socially, might face a mix of emotions of anger, sadness, powerlessness, depression, fantasies of grandeur as a compensation attempt to cope with one's own misery and drug use. No, these people are just horrible individuals, and they are prophets of their own misery and suffering. They're clearly not trying to integrate. They're clearly not trying to learn the language in Germany, and they clearly hold the dominant culture, values and traditions in disdain. And why they still live in Germany, I don't know. If they don't like, and if that is how they actually feel, why do they not move home? These people are solely responsible for their actions, and that is and I'm going to use some strong language now, solely a piss poor cop out by that so-called expert, in my opinion. And I think that individual should be stripped of their credentials. Disordered, unprepared migration experience and socio-cultural homelessness increase the risk of addiction and psychosis, said the so-called, well, I'm glad that they've said this in this report, the so-called expert. She continued, could serve as a means of releasing frustration and anger. No, I don't think it's that at all. I just think that these men are monsters, and they see that girl as being below them. I genuinely believe that's what it is. They just see her as they look at her as being a drunken Westerner. So she's, as we've heard in UK courts, that Pakistani Bangladeshi rapists here refer to their victims as being easy meat, white slags and the such. They see them as being below them and beneath them, because they don't adhere to their cultural values and traditions and beliefs. So they in their opinions, they have it coming to them. It's their own fault, and they've brung it upon themselves. That's what this psychiatrist is failing to understand, in my opinion. The psychiatrist further suggests that gang rape fosters identity and strengthens group feelings. Well, I do agree with that part. The rapist lawyers called the acquittal, suggesting that the traces of their semen in the victim's clothing did not prove the sex was forced. No, I'd probably say the fact that she was battered and been dragged through the mud and that she was crying and weeping probably proved that it had been forced. And again, this lawyer is an absolute scumbag of a human being. While presiding judge Anne-Marie Goering acknowledged that none of the defendants uttered a word of regret during the trial, she nevertheless sentenced 8 of the rapists to probation and no more than 2 years. Well, there we go, a female judge as well. There we go. Call me a bigot for that opinion, or a sexist or a misogynist for all you want, but I think that's just absolutely telling. And I think if a man had been a judge with that, I would go as far as to say he may not have been as lenient, possibly may have thrown the book at them. We'll never know, obviously. Only one rapist, a 19-year-old, received prison time. He was sentenced to 2 years and 9 months in prison without parole. See, this is the problem in Europe as well. They don't have jury trials over there in Europe. And I think that's a massive problem, because you get institutionalisation of ideology within the system. And that's part of the reason why we have juries, although it does come from a more religious background, in that no individual human being, all people are created equal, essentially, which means that no single judge, as we've seen here, has the right to find judgment over people. That's why we have a jury of our peers. But also, its peers was specifically chosen as well to avoid the institutionalised ideas falling in, because you could end up getting groups of experts who all have an internal groupthink, which we do see. And I believe, well, we see like in the news and media, in the way that they report on things, you do end up with groupthink. And this is why you do need outside people coming in to advise the court and act. And what a lot of juries don't realise is they can even overrule their judgment on what law is being presented. You know, like because even the actual legal framework itself can end up getting manipulated by institutionalised ideology. And this is why jury trials are incredibly important. And yes, they do have the flaws. You know, they do sometimes come out with bad judgments, but no system is perfect. Matthias Jahn of the Goethe University Frankfurt told ZDF Hoot that the court took into account the fact that none of the rapists had previously been sentenced to a youth prison or had convicted of sexual offences. I don't care. All right, so like you just go out, commit mass murder, but because you've been decent and good before that, and you've never been to prison before then, you've never been charged with anything. Oh, well, it was just a one-off because of frustration. I know they've committed this horrible crime, but he didn't really mean to go out and shoot everybody. He was just firing his gun off in frustration, and he just happened to hit a load of people. It was their own fault for getting in the way of the bullets, wasn't it? He was just frustrated because he was being uprooted from his country, and because he couldn't speak the lingo, and because the culture wasn't what he was used to. It's not his fault, is it? Madness. The court's decision can still be appealed. Apparently, Germany has previously been willing to lock up gang rapists. 10 migrants, 8 Syrians, an Iraqi and an Algerian who similarly said their victim had consented were sentenced to prison in July 2020 for gang raping an 18-year-old woman in Freiburg. The maximum prison sentence dished out was 5 years and 6 months. My goodness. Germany is a lost cause at this point, isn't it? Absolutely lost cause. Probably to do with how few children they're having. The Germany's got one of the worst birth replacement rates in the world, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these experts and judges and that were childless, and like Angela Merkel, she's childless, and that's why I think she invited in millions of migrants, because to her they're surrogate children for her. And I think we see this all the time with these people. I think that's why they have a tendency to infantilise. It's like we've seen with these universities as well in America with the anti-Semitism stuff that's happening. A lot of those what are they called, deans of the universities, childless women, and I think they see the students who are ranting and raving and protesting as surrogate children in a way, and why they want to protect them from everything as well. Oh, you can't say mean words, and they need safe spaces. It's all an infantilisation of them. Because they haven't engaged the maternal instincts. Nature always finds a way. It has to. Nature beats everything at the end of the day. In all senses. So, and it's why you end up with these childless women having cats as well, or like dogs, or like loads of cats and dogs, because they become these surrogate children. In my opinion, and it's just the same with this. So it's anyway. Let's carry on. Spiegel indicated that. Backlash. Spiegel indicated that those involved in the trial had been subjected to overwhelming criticism and hostility since the rapists were set free. Yeah, good. Absolutely good. At some point, and I'm not one for vigilante justice, I do believe in law and order, but at some point, a state does start going too far in the wrong direction, and people, unfortunately, at some point, do need to start taking matters into their own hands, because the state, as we saw like with the Soviet Union, can become very quickly the enemy of the people and start treating the people horrifically. And I think this is showing that the state of Germany holds its own citizens in contempt. And just like here, there's a two-tier system going on. We're seeing the fracturing of societies based upon racial lines, which is what happens in all multi-ethnic societies through history. They all end up with where you end up with basically insulated groups living next to each other but not really mixing, and they all manage their own affairs, their own laws, and never the twain really cross with each other unless, say, somebody from Group A murders somebody from Group B. Then the people from Group B, if they get hold of that person, will demand that the leaders of Group A do something about it. And then there's generally like a larger sort of head over the top of that. Like in the case of the Roman Empire, there may have been like a Roman, I don't know if you were talking like in Israel or somewhere, and there would have been the Roman representative there, but they wouldn't have got involved with the day-to-day handlings of the law within the different ethnic groups. They would have just expected that the taxes were paid, and that there wasn't like mass riots and things like that. That's the only thing that they really got involved in, and that appears to be, in my opinion, where Europe is heading to at the moment. Vetstone suggested that the hateful messages targeting Meise Groening and others have both crossed the line into criminal offences and reached a new worrying level in terms of intensity and mass. Well, I'd say the rulings of this court are going into treasonous levels, and that the people of Germany are actually starting to assert themselves and showing that actually you serve the people, not yourselves. And the Hamburg Judges Association noticed it was concerned over the unbearable agitation against a colleague who had fulfilled the task assigned to her under the basic law in this difficult case. Well, it's not a difficult case. The barbarian invaders, and they've absolutely destroyed a young woman's life, and it is their job to protect the German people from said barbarians, and they're not doing it. But once again, like we see with the police, closing ranks and and rather than accepting blame and self-reflection, that they're trying to target the people that are most affected by this, who are the German people themselves. Heike Hummelmeier, chairwoman of the association, said the calls for violence against the judge, which also have an anti-migrant background, are completely unbearable. One moment. Sorry about that. That was just a phone call. Quite an important one that I just had to take. So anyway, let's crack on with this. I've kind of lost my train of thought. It has been quite a long conversation, that, so I'll try and pick up from where I was. So apologies to those of you who are watching. Yeah, so we had this judge who's basically said that the call for violence against the judge, well, I don't necessarily know if call for violence is acceptable. With that in mind, that is wrong. But I think the judge in this should be also saying, is it surprising that they're going to be calling for violence? Like, what right-thinking person would look at these rulings and think, you know what, these people aren't going to be mad and angry about this? And I think that's them trying to keep control of the situation in Germany, because they know that it's all going wrong. And I get that. I get it. I get that they want to keep control, and I get that they want law and order, and they want peace, and they want everybody to get along. But unfortunately, it's untenable. A situation has been created that is going to be impossible to keep the lid on. And you just need to look at like the Balkans or like the troubles in Northern Ireland and things like that. You can't do this and not get serious violence and problems. You know, Gaza at the moment in Israel is a great example. All across Africa, you know, everywhere, you know, the entire continent of South America, it's hellholes. It's absolutely hellholes happening in those places. The psychiatrist creates a general profile of perpetrators. One second. Sorry. Arnie Timmerman, a criminal defence attorney on the board of Hamburg's working group of criminal defence lawyers, suggested that in the case of the outrage over Seymour's controversial remarks to Spiegel, she was being taken out of context. The psychiatrist creates a general profile of perpetrators who live on the fringes of society, completely uprooted culturally, linguistically and socially, and argues with racist stereotypes, said Timmerman. The reader gets confirmation of what he always thought about gang rapists. Yeah, gang rapists are horrible people. While the perception that Seymour meant to write off gang rape as an opportunity to vent migrant frustration generated outrage, it did not seem to register nearly as much anger as the court's decision to set the rapist free. Well, it's just an absolute S-show, that story, isn't it? I think I've said everything I need to on it. We've not got good futures ahead in Europe, I think, and I do believe it's going to get worse. We're seeing. I've mentioned this in another video the other day about Germany bringing back conscription and the problems that they've got there, but they've got their industry's facing collapse at the moment, or a lot of their large companies are moving abroad because of the cost of energy in Germany. You know, after the Nord Stream 2 got blown up. And then you have all the EU directives on top of that, you know, all the green energy madness. You know, Germany shut down the nuclear power plants. They've started reopening coal power plants in Germany now. They've got all the renewable stuff that they wasted billions and billions of euros on because they just don't perform. I mean, we had it in this. I saw it on the news the other day. In this country, they were celebrating how half the UK's energy was produced by wind farms. Like, yeah, well done. For one day of the year, 50% of energy was produced. What about the rest of it? What about on the days where the wind doesn't blow? Does that? What do we do then? You know, this is the issue that they have, and this is what Germany's seeing, and it's only going to take. You know, World War One was started by the Archduke Franz Ferdinand getting shot in an alley. You know, and they call it the shot that was heard around the world, and it was actually very unlucky for him because they tried to assassinate him earlier in the day and failed. And it was only later on in the day where his driver took a wrong turn down an alley, and one of the would-be assassins recognised him and saw him and pulled out his gun and shot him and Lady Sophia. It doesn't take much for things to kick off, especially when you've got serious financial woes. I was also talking about with the German housing market, the bottom's falling out of that, which again, I go into it much deeper in that video, and I suggest watching it if you're interested. But that is also exemplifying how the bottom's falling out of the German economy, because houses obviously sell for what people think they're worth and what they can afford at the time. You know, so that must mean that wages are stagnating or falling, or people are more becoming unemployed, or people are moving away, or profits are falling, you know, for the self-employed in Germany. And as these sorts of things start to happen, and we could be facing food shortages in the near future in Europe, again, part of that's been exacerbated by mass immigration into Europe, so there's more mouths to feed. I'm not saying that would fix the issue, but it makes it worse. unfortunately, we are going to start seeing factions of people forming, and it's only going to take, you know, the proverbial tinder's dry, and it's only going to take a small spark eventually for it to boil over. And we'll leave it at that anyway. If you found this interesting or informative, or it's piqued your emotions in any way, shape or form, please like, subscribe, and put a comment below. Even if you disagree with the stuff I've said, please do, because I do like different points of view, and it's always nice to be able to reflect and mull over different ideas, and I am open to other people's points of view. Anyway, thank you for your time. Take care. Bye bye.